Hey kids, Grandpa here. How you guys doing today? Well, today we're doing the much awaited video, part 2 in my series of how I fed myself for an entire year for $250,000. And in this episode, we're going to look specifically at hogs and raising pigs. There's always something that needs fed up here on Grandpa's farm in Alaska. A place where you're always welcome. Come on, Lily, let's go feed. Now, there's a lot of advantages to raising pigs, and there are some disadvantages. But before we get into all of that, and before we get into the economics, let me get a little bit of disclosure up front, okay? Once again, I want you to go look at the first video I did about chickens. There'll be a link in the description. If you have not seen that one, please watch that one first before watching this one, so that you'll have things in the right order. We're going to be looking at the economics of raising hogs. The actual costs involved in going out, buying some pigs, having the pens and equipment facilities necessary, putting the feed to them, raising them up to market weight. We're not going to deal really with the cost of processing them, which is an added expense, although if you're like me, you do it yourself, and so it's pretty negligible, some freezer paper and vacuum seal bags. And I want you to understand that this is my experience, and your experience with this probably will be different, because it's going to be different all over the country. Different prices for pigs, different prices for feed. You might have different infrastructure already in place that I'm not addressing here, or you may have to add additional infrastructure that I'm not addressing here. You might decide to use different techniques. You might make different choices as far as your infrastructure and supplies and feeds are concerned, breeds of hogs. Any number of variables could affect your outcome in this. So let's not get bogged down in the details. I'm putting this together as a reference point to give you a baseline to work with so that you can build your financial structure for your homestead or your farm and kind of have an idea of what you're going to be getting into. I strongly suggest that you do this with every aspect of your farm. From putting in a garden, to raising chickens, to raising pigs, to buying horses, cows, sheep, goats, whatever. It's an important step that everybody needs to go through and really think things through. Now, you can use my figures here as sort of a template and then pencil in your own numbers, if you will, as to what the actual costs are going to be for what you're trying to do. But at least use it as sort of a guideline for the kind of things you need to be thinking about when you're starting getting into this sort of thing. Okay, in my particular example, I'm going to be raising 4 hogs for my example. Now, it's just me, and so for one person, I really don't need 4 hogs. But maybe I do need 4 hogs, and let me explain to you why. I enjoy bacon. And I would typically eat the bacon off of 4 hogs in a year. That's a lot of bacon, I know, but that's about how much bacon I would consume, I think, in about a year. Now, that would leave me with an awful lot of meat, way more meat than I can eat. So it's not practical for me to raise hogs just for bacon. What am I going to do with the sausage and the hams and the pork chops and all the rest of the cuts? So for me, for one person, 2 hogs is usually more than sufficient. But I may have to supplement that with some store-bought bacon, which I don't like to do because I don't like eating bacon that has the nitrates in it. I do have another video coming out very shortly on how I make my own bacon, and you'll see that process. It's a nitrate-free smoked bacon. Really good. But in any event, I'm going to raise 4 hogs, and I'm doing that because that would be what a basic family of 4 would have. Your average family of 4 could raise 4 hogs and put that meat into the freezer. Now, what I'm talking about is market hogs. I'm talking about buying a breed of hog that is somewhat commercially available, that is, you're starting out with a young weanling pig, so 10 pounds or 8 pounds or something, and you're bringing it to what is the normal breeding weight or market weight for that hog, and typically that's going to be around 240 pounds. Now, the breeds that I prefer for my market pork is I like the Durocs and the Yorkshires. There is a plethora of different types of hogs out there. Berkshires are particularly nice, one of my favorites. There are other types of hogs, like the Mangalisas, which are a lardo hog. These are raised specifically for lard and not specifically for meat. The Mangalisas are very expensive to get into. They take a long time to develop, much longer than a standard market hog. But they're a good hog for up here in Alaska because they have hair on them. They stay well woollied all winter long, and so they do fairly well in that regard. They can survive our winters up here, which is tough on a lot of hogs because, you know, hogs are like human beings running around naked out there with no clothes on. So, I mean, they don't have a lot of fur on them, so they don't stay warm like the other animals up here in Alaska. So it's very hard on hogs to survive winters up here in Alaska unless you have them in some sort of heated facility, and that's just not financially feasible for me. Maybe if someone lived down south or someplace, it wouldn't be a problem, but up here we have to concern ourselves with that, which is indicative of some of the things I want to talk about, and that when you're raising hogs, you do have to be aware of your environment and what your requirements are. If you're somewhere in the deep south, in the desert areas, Arizona and Texas and stuff, it might be hard on your hogs to raise them in that heat. They need to cool off. They need mud and water to get into. And that's something I'm not addressing in this video. So you may have something that's a requirement specific to your region that you need to address. And that's something that you'll need to think about as you plan for this. In any event, in this example, I'm going to be butchering a pair of Duroc Yorkshire crosses. I do like crossbred hogs because you end up getting hybrid vigor, which is they tend to be a little bit healthier, a bit more robust than some of the purebred type hogs. Okay, well, with that said, why don't we delve into the math, and we'll take a look at that next. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at what we're dealing with here with hogs. So again, just like we did with chickens, we're going to look at the cost of our land costs involved with the hogs. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is we're buying 40 acres of land and we're building a house on it. Our cost to buy that land and to build a house on it in order for us to be there, take care of our farm, going to cost us $240,000. Again, this is something that's going to change given your circumstances. I'm just showing you as an example what I'm going through. So $240,000 divided by 40 acres gives me a cost per acre of about $6,000 per acre. And that gives me a cost per square foot of about 14 cents a square foot. Now, 4 pigs are going to require a pen of at least 16 by 32 plus the roof over area of about 6 foot by 8 foot. So that's 512 square feet of pen plus a 48 square foot area for the building, or 560 square feet total. And so I take that 560, multiply that by 14, and that'll give me my land cost allocation of $78.40, okay? I divide that by my life expectancy of 30 years. It gives me a cost per year of $2.61. You see how that works? We take the item that we're looking at, we divide it by its life expectancy, and that gives us our allocated cost for the year. So we take a look at our property taxes for our property. It's going to cost us about 90 cents for the property taxes for that square footage. That's going to be an annual expense, so it's 90 cents for property taxes. Now, to buy hogs, and this is going to be different for everybody, to buy hogs, I'm figuring up here in Alaska, it cost me about $100 a piece to buy them. I know for a fact that in Ohio, I can buy them for a whole lot cheaper, and certainly if I were to keep a pair of breeding hogs here, I could have them for cheaper yet. But right now, I'm looking at spending about $100 a piece, so if I have 4 hogs, that's $400. An annual expense, so $400 is my allocated cost for the year. Hog feeder, okay? Now here I'm going to show you an example of a hog feeder. This is from Valley Vet Supply. It's got a heavy lid on it. It holds a lot of grain. I can attach it to the wall so the hogs can't bounce it around and move it. And this one in particular is costing $127.95. Now I can save a lot of money by building myself one of these out of lumber. If you have the skill set, you can certainly do that too. You could drop that $127.95 to, well, maybe nothing if you have scrap materials around, you know, maybe less if you have to buy just a few things, but or, you know, I've seen guys build their own and actually spend more than that. So $127.95, I'd have to think long and hard about making my own. Figure that's going to last about 5 years, so we have our allocated cost per year. Then we look at our water. Again, here is the water from Agri Supply, a good example of hog water. This one costs $46.99. One of the key things to hog waters are you've got to make sure they're secure to the ground. Sorry, I had to grab something to drink. You got to make sure they're secure to the ground. So $46.99 for the water. Again, that's going to last about 5 years. So $9.40 was our allocated cost. A pigsty. Now here's some examples of some pig buildings, sheds that we would use for hogs. If you can't build your own, you can buy these. Typically, they cost around $250 a piece. And some of them that are well made, you're going to get 10 years out of them. When I get to Ohio, I'll show you. I'm going to actually build one out of log. That'll last a lot longer than 10 years, I believe. Again, so that breaks down an allocated cost. Fencing. Now, for hogs, there's two types of fencing. There's two ways to go. One is you can use hog panels like you see here. These are a 16-foot long hog panel. They're graduated at the bottom with smaller openings and bigger as it gets toward the top. These are highly effective for hogs. However, pigs will get their nose underneath these. They will root them. They will try to lift them, and they try to get out of them. Another good choice would be to use electric fencing. Just know that if you use electric fencing on a hog, once that electric fencing is there in place, you will never get a hog. Even if you take that fencing away, that hog will not cross where that fencing was. Once they learn it's there, you'll have a hard time getting the pig to cross the line where fencing used to be. And when you're first training the pig how to use fencing, you've got to set fencing up inside of the hog panels so they have that as a deterrent. What a hog will do is they'll walk up to that electric wire if you use a single or double wire technique, and if they get stung like on their ear or anywhere behind their eyeballs, like if they get up on the bridge of their nose, up high on their face, or any place on their body behind their eyeballs, that pig is going to go forward. And so if you have electric fence and he's coming straight at it and he's got his head down low and it hits him right between the ears, he's going to shoot straight through that electric fence and be out. And then you'll have a hell of a time getting him back in. The way you can stop that from happening is run that electric fencing directly inside of those hog panels. So if he gets shocked, he can't go forward. He has to get back and away from it. Again, for hogs or for any electric fencing situation, I really prefer the Premier One netting type fence because it gives a good visual screen, a visual wall, something they can easily see, as opposed to just a single strand or two. And they can't get through it so easily because it's a net all tied together. Okay, but in this case, we're using 6 panels of 16-foot hog panels with some T-posts. The panels cost about $20 each, and the T-posts cost $5 each. $235 in infrastructure cost, and I'm going to say that's going to last about 5 years. Now, it probably will last longer than that, probably a lot longer than that, but hogs can sometimes be very difficult on panels. They can bend them up. And, you know, stuff happens. You hit them with tractors, trees drop across them. But the problem we have here is moose get tangled up in them, so it can be a problem. Okay, we got to feed our hogs, so we need a 5-pound feed scoop. Again, you can cut one of these out of a bottle and make one, but I bought one for $6. Now, this is the same feed scoop that I use for my chickens and for my other critters, so you may already have a feed scoop. And you need a barrel to hold some feed for the hogs, or 2 or 3 barrels, depending on how many hogs you get and what kind of feed you're feeding. Okay, so this gives us a total initial infrastructure cost for our hogs. Buying the hogs, setting up their pen, and getting all the equipment necessary for them. We're at $1,180 for the year, or an allocated cost, $512. So this is how much money you actually have to lay out, but we're going to allocate $512 of that per year based on an expected life expectancy of that item, okay? All right, let's go ahead and and move on here a little bit. Oh, let me switch over to select. There we go. Now I can move up. There we go. Okay, so let's talk about feed. Your hog is going to eat somewhere between 570 and 640 pounds of feed to bring that pig from a weanling size up to market weight. Depending on where you live in America, that figure will vary greatly. It varies greatly on the kind of feed you're feeding and the environment in which that hog is raised in. Up here in Alaska, it's cold, so they have to eat a lot more food than they would in the lower 48 because they have to fight off all the cold. They burn up a lot of energy trying to stay warm. That's not the case in the lower 48. So my food cost is somewhat higher than what yours would be in the lower 48. So 4 hogs will basically eat about 2,560 pounds of feed up here in Alaska to get to market weight. And that's about 52 50-pound bags of feed. Up here, if I buy organic, non-GMO feed, which is mostly barley, it costs me $22.50 a bag. I need 52 bags to feed 4 hogs, or a total price of $1,170, or a price per pig of about $292, almost $300 per pig. Now, you can save a lot in your feed costs by doing other things to supplement your hogs, okay? Let me switch the camera around here. Let me talk about that. One of the things that I do that makes a huge difference in my feed cost is there's a local brewery over here, and I go and I get free grain from them. They use barley to make the beer, plus they add some other stuff to it, and they brew in great big batches at their brewery. They dump the spent grains then into great big, huge plastic tubs that weigh about 1,200, 1,400 pounds each. Now, I did have a tractor and a trailer capable of handling those when I was raising hogs commercially up here. So I could go over, they would load the totes onto my trailer with their forklift. I could bring them home and unload them with my tractor. And it was really cheap and inexpensive for me to raise hogs here because I could simply roll over and dump a couple 100 pounds of spent barley grain to them and let them free choice and eat all they can eat. And the hogs loved it. They really did. They made good use of that, and they put on a lot of growth. It was not a complete feed. I did have to give them some supplements. I did have to give them some bag feed and some minerals and stuff to make up for the fact that the barley was spent. It loses a lot of its protein having gone through the brewing process. But still, it was a great supplement that allowed me to dramatically reduce my feed costs. Another thing you can do is contact local bakeries, local grocery stores, get the day old bread or the spent stuff from the bakery that didn't sell, cakes, donuts, whatever it is. Talk to local bakeries that you have around you, donut shops, pizzerias, leftover pizza, grocery stores. Talk to the guy in the produce department when they start stocking the shelves with produce. If there's something blemished or damaged, they'll take that out and throw it out. They'll take the peelings off lettuces and cabbages and stuff, and so there'll be trimmings. Go ahead and talk to them about collecting all of that. You may have to provide them with a barrel for it. You give them a barrel with a lid, and they'll throw all that stuff in the barrel for you. Sometimes you get some garbage and some other stuff in there that you don't want. You may have to clean it up and sort through a little bit, but it can really save you a lot of money in your feed costs. Sometimes they'll just give it to you in the boxes in which it comes. They'll get boxes of apples or lettuce or what have you, and you take the lid off, and they'll go through and clean it as they go through it, put what they want on the shelf. The rest they throw in the box, and that goes to the garbage. Talk to them. Maybe they'll just give you that garbage for you to bring home and feed your hogs. So there's a lot of things you can do to help supplement your feed costs and reduce that pretty substantially. Okay, let's get back to what we're talking about here. Oh, restaurants. Restaurants are another good source of places to go to for getting feed. Okay, so now let's take a look at our economics, and we're going to look at this in 2 ways: the textbook, and then I'm going to show you a little bit about my actual experience. So my total infrastructure cost is $512.85, and we got that from right here in our total. So our $512.85 and our food cost of $1,170 gives me a total cost of raising 4 pigs of $1,682.85. Okay, that's going to the store, buying all the feed that those pigs are going to need, and buying the pigsty and the fencing and yada yada, okay? As opposed to my actual experience of my infrastructure costs were more like $100. My total feed cost was more like $350 because I'm relying so heavily on my brewer's grain and my table scraps. And so my cost of raising my 4 pigs was $458. So how does that impact us? Well, let's take a look at some information here. One hog butchers out at 240 pounds. When your pig gets to 240 pounds, that's the size you want them to be to butcher. That's the ideal size. You go past 240 pounds, their rate of gain dramatically reduces. So you have to feed them that much more for every pound of gain that they put on. You're just not making a good, efficient use of the hog at that point. And you're really starting to get into sizes, meat sizes that become too large for regularly recognized recipes and stuff. So anyhow, you want to butcher at about 240 pounds. Now, when that hog is 240 pounds and you kill it and gut it, and you reduce it down to what's known as hanging weight. Hanging weight means that you've cleaned the pig, you've removed all of its guts from the inside, washed the outside of it, you've removed the head, and it's hanging there on the rail. It now weighs 180 pounds. So you've removed about 60 pounds of guts and head. That 180 pounds further will be reduced once you cut it up, skin it, and bone it, down to about 120 pounds of meat. Or for 4 pigs, you're looking at about 480 pounds of total meat on that hog. Okay, so if we have a total cost of $1682.85, and we end up butchering that hog, we end up with 120 pounds of pig, and we're doing that at 4 pigs, so that's 480 pounds total meat. That gives us a cost per pound of $3.51. That's what it costs to raise your own pig in a textbook situation. Now, because of my hard work and sourcing out other resources for feed and being able to build the infrastructure myself a little cheaper, my cost per pound was 95 cents. And so that's a huge difference, folks. That's just, that's what, $2.75 difference in price. That's a huge difference there. So sourcing out those reduced feed costs can save you tremendously in your bill. There's other things you could do too besides just sourcing it out. You might consider going into a larger pasture situation and letting your hogs eat more just pasture as opposed to feeding them. There's some other things you can do. You cannot just pasture hogs. You can't just put hogs out in the field and think they're going to survive just on what they can root up and eat. These are not wild hogs. These are domesticated hogs. They're going to require some grain. If you want to have a good rate of gain on your pigs, you're going to have to feed them. Okay, so then this begs the question, if I do this in a textbook scenario and it costs me $3.51 a pound to raise my pigs, I know I can go to the grocery store and I can buy pork loin at $2.99 a pound. Why would I pay $3.51, 52 cents a pound more for a whole hog when I can buy the best piece, the pork loin, or theoretically best piece, for $2.99? Well, let me tell you something, folks. I went to Costco the other day and I bought a pork loin, and it tasted like crap. I might as well have been eating cardboard. It was horrible. As compared to the quality of the pork that I raised myself, which is flavorful, it's got wonderful color to it, and it's a whole lot healthier. So let's talk about why you want to grow your own. First of all, you control the feeding. If you're controlling the feeding, then you eliminate all the genetically modified organisms. You eliminate any soy in the meat. You eliminate all the pesticides in the meat. The meat will simply taste better. Your pasture-raised hog that you're feeding that grain to is going to taste a whole lot better than the one you'll buy at the store. Your preserved meats, you can make them nitrate-free if that's your choice. So you save the nitrates on it. The pig has had no antibiotics put into it. It's had a healthy, enjoyable life, not a factory life existence. You have gotten some great exercise, and you can relish in the knowledge that what you're eating is good quality food and not the crap that you would get from the store. Okay? All right, so let's talk about some other things. All costs are going to be affected by regional changes, and material cost, infrastructure cost, however you decide to build, is greatly going to increase that. And again, I reduced my cost by feeding brewery grains, grocery trimmings, and infrastructure costs. Building myself stuff was cheaper. Here's just a little bit of technical information for you for a background. Birth to 40 pounds, piglets are going to eat about 80 pounds of grain. Between 40 and 250 pounds, hogs are going to eat about 490 pounds of grain. So the total grain consumed by a hog going to butcher weight's about 570. Up here in Alaska, it's a bit more than that. I feed about 100 pounds more grain up here because we lose that much in the hog trying to stay warm. So if you have a baby pig, you can expect that baby pig. If it's 6 to 11 pounds, you're going to feed it about a half a pound of grain a day. Once it gets from 11 to 22 pounds, you're going to feed it about a pound of grain a day. 22 to 44 pounds, you're going to feed it a little more than 2 pounds a day. Once it's over 44 pounds, going to 110 pounds, you're going to feed it a little more than 4 pounds a day. So it's a big jump, 2.2 to 4.1. And then 110 to 170 pounds, you're going to feed it almost 6 pounds a day. And then going to full body weight, you're going to be feeding about 7 pounds a day per hog. So 4 hogs, what's that, 7, 14, 28 pounds a day to 4 hogs. That makes a 50-pound bag go pretty quickly when you're feeding half of that a day. So, and then in addition to that, you're also going to want to give your hogs some roughage. I still break up and feed my pigs some hay every so often. I do have my pigs outside, and they do get some pasture, and they get to go root around. I don't have as much fencing for them to give them as big an area as what I might like. I tend to work my hogs. Not only are they food for me, but I put them to use in rototilling up and clearing land for me. Typically, when I'm developing property here, I'll put the goats in first, let the goats eat down the trees and kill everything and eat the bark off of everything and the leaves off of everything. And then I'll put the hogs in after that, and they'll root up everything. Then I can remove all the sticks from the ground, pull everything out, rake it out, grade it back out smooth again, and it's ready for planting. So something that I do trying to raise hogs. Okay, so in summary, let me touch base on just a couple things that I want to really emphasize in this video. For starters, the quality of the meat that you get from raising your own pig as opposed to the store-bought pig is phenomenal. The difference is literally night and day. When I raise my own pigs and I feed them the feed that I feed them the feed that I feed, you know what I mean. I end up with a delicious dark red meat. It's more beef colored than it is what everyone traditionally thinks of as pork. It's not a white meat, okay? The pork industry a while back decided to try to make their meat more marketable to the public, and so they started feeding wheat to pigs, turning the fat white in pigs, and making the meat very light colored, more chicken-like, because they were trying to make people believe that pork was healthier because it was a white meat. In fact, you probably heard them advertising pork the other white meat. Used to be a marketing campaign they had back in the 90s, I think, or maybe before that even. What you feed your hog will have a tremendous impact in what the meat tastes like. If you feed grains like I do, a lot of barley and some corn, I end up with a deeper, redder, much more tasty piece of meat. If you're going to feed wheat to your pig or some of the commercial hog feeds, you're going to end up with that more white, horrible tasting pig. So it can impact what your pig's going to taste like, and so you have to make that decision yourself. I highly recommend buying what is available locally that works well for you. In my particular situation, I've been very fortunate in that I have a brewery near me. I can go get their spent grains from the brewing process, and my hogs really like eating that. And so I supplement a lot of their feed, thus reducing my feed cost tremendously by feeding them the spent brewer's grain. You can also contact your local bakeries in the area and buy the day-old bread. Go to your grocery stores, buy the trimmings from the vegetable area. When they clean up the vegetables, they remove outer leaves and stuff. Pick up all those kind of scrap items and feed those to your hogs as well. Those will help reduce a lot of your costs. But going back to quality, the quality of the meat from the home-raised pig is substantially better than the quality of the meat that you buy from the grocery store. It's hands down different flavor. In fact, I've had customers of mine, because I have raised hogs commercially, I've had customers of mine tell me that they served pork dinner to their family, and their teenage son looked at their mother and said, "Why does this pork taste weird?" And she explained to him that it was the first of the pig that they had gotten from me as opposed to the store-bought. And his comment was, "Oh, so that's what pig's supposed to taste like." He was that surprised and actually could tell. He was a teenage boy, could tell the difference in the quality of the meat, which I thought was pretty cool, and I'm glad she shared that with me. The other thing you have to think about is the quality of life that pig is going through. Now, I know some of you out there probably don't care whether your pig has a nice life or not, but I do. I care that my pigs have a good life. And so it's important to me to know that they're raised in a humane fashion and they're treated well and allowed to be pigs and to do all the things that pigs like to do, rooting around and stuff. Which brings me down to my next step. Pigs work for a living. My pigs do. I use my pigs for a number of things. I use them for tilling up an area that I want tilled up. I use them for clearing land. Typically, I'll have an enclosed area. I'll put the goats in. If there's a lot of trees and shrubs, the goats will eat the bark and leaves off of everything, killing it. And then after they've killed it, I'll put the pigs in. The pigs will root up the roots and dig it up, and then I can simply clear the land. Makes it a lot easier than going in there with a piece of equipment, burning diesel fuel to do that job. So my pigs do have their own job here on the farm, and they do it well, and it's a nice byproduct for me. And not only am I getting good quality meat, but I'm getting an area rototilled and prepped that I can turn into garden space or lawn care or whatever I want to do later on. And the last thing that I want to touch base on here before we conclude, because this is getting kind of long, is don't name your pigs. Or if you're going to name your pigs, name them something like pork chop or bacon or something that will remind you on a regular basis of the reality of what that pig is going to be in the future. I guess the rule of thumb that I've always had here on my farm is don't play with your food. Whether you're sitting at the table or whether you're working around out in the farm, don't play with your food. The pigs are raised for dinner. They're not being raised to be pets. They're not going to have a little dog bed in the house and a little comfy spot next to the fire for them to come in. They're raised outside commercially to be slaughtered and put meat in the freezer so we can eat all winter. So I recommend not playing with your food. Hard to do, I know. Some people get attached, and that's only natural. We're human beings. It's a natural thing that human beings do. I like my pigs. I go out and pet my pigs and scratch them behind the ears and spend some time with them. That doesn't mean I'm getting emotionally attached to them. I'm not going to butcher them. I'm going to butcher them. But I might as well treat them humanely and have them have an enjoyable life and feel some love and affection while they're alive. So I treat my pigs with a lot of respect, and I hope you do the same. So anyhow, I hope you enjoy this series. A part 3 will be coming up next. I'm not sure what animal I'm going to do next. I may do another poultry item, or I may do horses. But if you like this kind of thing, please do like and subscribe. And we will catch you another day. Thanks, guys. How about them toad suckers? Ain't they sappy? Sucking them toads offshore make them happy. Hug a mug of toad suckers way down south. Sticking them sucky toads in zay mouth. I be a toad sucker, knowing a duck it. Just find an old toad and you rear back and suck it. Folks, you have a good day. Bye.